Dorothy "Dottie" Yates-McCathran was 40 years old when she went missing from her home in Vivian, Louisiana, USA. Dorothy Yates, known to her friends and family as Dottie, was living on a 5-acre property in Vivian, Louisiana, with her husband, Kevin. The couple had been married for 7 years and had 2 children, a 14-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. Her parents, who live in Shreveport, have custody of the children. Her mother, Martha Mullins, described Dottie as crafty, outgoing, with lots of friends and a contagious laugh. Her brother mentioned that Dorothy was always part of the popular crowd growing up, played a lot of sports, and had a large circle of friends. Dorothy and her brother were both adopted, and she was particularly close to her mother. During high school, she trained as a soccer player. Their parents divorced when she was a teenager. She took it very hard. Dorothy attended university in Waco, Texas, where she studied interior design. During her time there, she became addicted to hydrocodone, a medication she started taking to manage pain from a forehead injury. After struggling with her addiction, Dorothy moved back to her parents' house to regain her footing. However, she got involved with a party crowd and became heavily addicted to drugs. For 20 years, Dorothy attempted to overcome her addiction by entering rehab programs, trying 10 different centers with mixed results, but she was always ultimately kicked out. At some point, Dorothy entered a relationship with a man named Kevin, whom she met in rehab. The couple got married and had a daughter together, but their relationship was abusive and plagued by drug use. A month before their daughter was born, Dorothy had to be hospitalized and receive stitches after Kevin struck her with a broomstick. However, Dorothy suddenly vanished from her home on Vivian Airport Road. Her family last heard from her on January 21, 2019, when she was last seen. She went missing one day after her daughter's 6th birthday. The day before Dorothy went missing, on the 20th, her mother spoke to her on the phone. Dorothy was upset that she was unable to see her daughter in Shreveport, which is 40 minutes away by car, on her birthday. She even cried about it. However, she seemed to cheer up at the thought of coming over for a birthday party the following Saturday, on the 26th of January. Dorothy also expressed her excitement about taking her daughter camping on Sunday. However, on January 21st, around 3:45 p.m., Dorothy called a friend, who asked to remain anonymous. During the call, Dottie told her friend that she and her husband had been fighting a lot lately, and that she needed to get away. She asked if she could take a restaurant job offered by her friend. While on the call, someone entered the room. Dottie, who had been crying before, suddenly composed herself and greeted the person. She continued the conversation with her friend after that person arrived. 2 days later, on January 23rd, Dorothy's husband, Kevin, contacted her mother to inform her that he had gone into the city on January 21st with his cousin to look at a job, and when he returned, Dorothy was gone. He explained that he had purposely disabled their car to prevent Dorothy from leaving. When he returned home, the disabled car was still in its spot, and there were no signs that anyone had visited. Kevin claimed that before he left, Dorothy had been in the kitchen, cutting and cooking okra. When he came back, he found the house filled with smoke. A partially burned TV remote wrapped in a wet towel was found in the bathroom, a charred spatula was on the stove, and clothes were scattered around the house. Kevin mentioned that Dorothy had recently become paranoid and suspected she had started using drugs again, possibly mixing her prescribed medication with meth, which she had used before. At first, Kevin thought that Dorothy had gone to a friend's house to stay away for a while, something she had done in the past. However, when she failed to return or contact anyone, he became concerned. Dorothy had left behind her purse, driver's license, and broken phone. Her mother noted that Dorothy would never leave the house without her makeup. The police were notified of Dorothy's disappearance on January 23rd, but she was not officially declared missing until January 27th, after she failed to show up for her daughter's birthday party. Around February 1st, a drone search was conducted on the property where Dorothy lived. Future searches, which involved sniffer dogs, were also planned. By February 21st, 2 searches had been conducted. The authorities searched the house, vehicles, and surrounding areas, interviewed neighbors, and used drones for aerial searches. A third search included the assistance of the Shreveport Fire Department KA-9 Search and Rescue Task Force, the Arc-Latex KA-9 Search and Rescue Team, and KE-9 Spirit. The area searched spanned 30 acres and was divided into grids to ensure thorough coverage. Some of Dorothy's belongings, a feather boa, some jewelry, and a knit hat, were discovered. All items, except the boa, were confirmed to belong to Dorothy or her family. A pile of feathers was also found, but it remains unclear whether they were part of the boa. Kevin later found a phone under the porch of their house, which he wanted to hand over to the authorities. Instead of taking it directly to the police, he gave the phone to Dorothy's parents at a soccer game, where they turned it over to the sheriff. Unfortunately, the phone, along with another that Dorothy had left behind, was too damaged to extract any useful information. Since Dorothy's disappearance, Kevin has grown distant from her family, and the soccer game marked the first time in 16 months that Kevin had seen his daughter. Dorothy's family has since grown suspicious of Kevin, and their relationship with him has become estranged. There are rumors that Kevin once expressed anger toward Dorothy, reportedly saying she was pissing him off and that he wanted to get rid of her. Some speculate that Kevin might have staged the mess in the house to confuse the investigation. Additionally, Dorothy's family fears she may have gotten into trouble with other drug users or dealers. It's possible she owed money to dangerous people, or perhaps something happened at one of the drug houses she was known to frequent. In April 2019, a mysterious newspaper clipping about Dorothy's disappearance, with notes and maps drawn on it, was left at a convenience store in Vivian. Police have asked the person who left it to come forward, but as of May 2021, no one has done so. On December 30th, a billboard was erected asking for any information about Dorothy's disappearance, with a reward of $20,000. Dorothy's family has also hired a private investigator to help in the search. Dorothy's brother is particularly distrustful of Kevin and believes he may be responsible for her disappearance. At the time of her disappearance, Dorothy Yates-McCathran was 40 years old. She was 5 feet 3 inches, weighed around 115 pounds, had brown hair and brown eyes, and had several notable features: scars on both arms and her abdomen, a tattoo on her abdomen, and pierced ears. If you have any information about her disappearance, please contact the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office at 318-675-2170.
It's been almost 10 months, and I never would have thought we would be at this point, still looking for her and have not found her.
Really sad. It's just been terrible that my mommy has been gone for a long time and start to missing her a lot.
Skye Budnick. In 2008, Skye Budnick was a young junior at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. She was studying international business with a minor in Japanese studies, chosen due to her long-standing passion for Japanese culture and entertainment. Skye was known as a sweet, hard-working, yet deeply introverted young woman. Those who knew her described her as quiet, isolated, and shy, someone who found it difficult to make friends or adapt socially. Despite this, she had a small group of close friends. At the time of her disappearance, she was struggling academically but had never been in any trouble at school. The last time her family saw Skye was on the evening of Monday, March 31st, 2008, just one day before she disappeared. She didn't say anything out of the ordinary, and her family had no reason to believe she was planning to leave. She casually mentioned that she planned to stay at a friend's dorm for a few days, but nothing about traveling to Japan. When 4 days passed without hearing from Skye, her family became increasingly worried. On April 4th, they accessed her email account and found a receipt for a one-way ticket to the northern Japanese island of Hokkaido, with a layover in Tokyo. The flight had left on April 1st, and it was confirmed that Skye boarded the plane. She arrived in Sapporo, the capital city of Hokkaido, on April 2nd. In her email drafts was a letter addressed to a friend, in which Skye expressed a desire to see Japan's cherry trees in bloom. Some say the letter contained suicidal thoughts, while others interpreted it as a reflection of wanting to start anew. This was particularly concerning to her family, as Skye had previously mentioned that if she were to commit suicide, she would want to do so in Japan. However, her plan to visit Hokkaido was puzzling. The cherry blossoms bloom from south to north in Japan, and historically, they wouldn't have been in bloom in Hokkaido until the end of April or early May. It would have made more sense for her to travel to central Japan, like Tokyo, where the trees would have been blooming earlier. It remains unclear when the note was written. If Skye had planned to stay in Hokkaido to wait for the blossoms, she might have had enough time to reconsider her choices, particularly if she was contemplating suicide, or possibly settle into a new life there. Skye left without taking any of her personal belongings, bringing only her laptop, a Nintendo console and around $800. She didn't have a phone or bank cards with her, her other personal items were left at home, and her car was still parked at the airport. Growing concerns about Skye's well-being led her parents to fly to Japan in hopes of finding her. For the first week, she appeared to be acting like a regular tourist, visiting places like hot springs. The last confirmed sighting of Skye was on April 7th, when she mentioned traveling to Sapporo. After that, she vanished. Search teams combed through the mountainous areas where she might have gone, but no trace of her was ever found. One theory is that Skye may still be in the mountains, lost and undiscovered, as the remote locations could take years, if not decades, to yield any clues. Another theory is that she may have chosen to start a new life in Japan, as she had often spoken of figuring things out on her own. Some believe she stayed to witness the cherry blossoms, which bloom later in April, an event she had frequently expressed interest in. Her family, however, continues to search for answers. They have a GoFundMe campaign to raise financial support for their ongoing search. On January 19, 2024, Skye's sister Megan announced they plan to return to Japan to resume their search. Despite the many theories, Skye's whereabouts remain a mystery. She was 21 years old when she disappeared, standing 5 feet 6 inches, with brown hair and blue eyes. Anyone with information is encouraged to contact the U.S. consulate in Sapporo, Japan. Skye's disappearance leaves her family in limbo, still searching for answers, while the mystery surrounding her fate remains unsolved. Laresha Walker. Laresha Walker's disappearance has baffled investigators and her family for over 2 decades. On November 19, 1999, Laresha, 23 years old, vanished under mysterious circumstances in Nashville, Tennessee. That night, she dropped off her 2-year-old son, Rayvon, at her sister Lakeisha's house, explaining that she needed to head to Murfreesboro the next morning to get an estimate for car repairs. She spoke with her father later that night, but it would be the last time anyone in her family heard from her. The following day, after Laresha failed to pick up her son and there had been no communication from her, Lakeisha went to her sister's townhouse on Edwards Avenue. The scene inside was eerily normal. The lights were on, music was playing loudly, and the screen door was locked. However, Laresha was nowhere to be found, and her car, a maroon 1995 Oldsmobile Achiever, was also missing. 2 days later, on November 21, 1999, her mother, Wanda Faye Walker, reported her missing. A neighbor mentioned hearing Laresha arguing with someone outside her townhouse the night she was last seen. Despite this lead, no substantial evidence surfaced, and her car has never been found. According to her family, Laresha had no known conflicts in her personal or work life. She wasn't in a relationship and was described as private but cautious, making it highly unlikely she would have willingly put herself in danger. Police have long suspected foul play, believing Laresha was abducted. Detective Sergeant Pat Pastiglian noted that the condition of her home suggested an abduction, they went in there and took her because the way her home looked 1 second before she was kidnapped is the way it was when police found it. Her clothes were left behind, and her heart medication, necessary due to a pre-existing condition, remained untouched in her home, raising further alarm. Then, in a tragic twist, 17 years later in 2016, another devastating blow hit the Walker family. Wanda Faye Walker, Laresha's mother, also disappeared under troubling circumstances. Wanda, 60 at the time, was last seen leaving her home on October 5, 2016, heading to her job at Dollar Tree in Nashville. She never arrived at work. A week later, her car, a Nissan Maxima, was discovered parked on Wade Avenue, just a short distance from her home. Inside the vehicle were Wanda's purse and blood in the back seat, which was later identified as hers.
The car was found locked, and there were personal belongings inside the car that she would have normally carried with her. Upon forensic examination of the car, there was a significant amount of blood found inside the car.
The last person to see Wanda was reportedly her boyfriend, Harold Henderson. He claimed to have helped her earlier that day when her car overheated, but after adding oil, the car was working fine and they parted ways. Conflicting reports, however, have placed her last at home. While Laresha and Wanda's disappearances are both tragic, authorities have found no evidence to suggest that the two cases are connected. Yet, the double blow to the family, the disappearance of both mother and daughter, leaves them in agonizing uncertainty. Laresha's car, with Tennessee license plate 419 ABG and a distinct scratch on the driver's side, has still never been located. Her family continues to search for answers and hopes that one day they will find out what happened to Laresha and Wanda.
Having closure will help us get a sense of, peace.
If you have any information regarding either disappearance, please contact local authorities. Joshua Guimond, born on June 18, 1982, disappeared on November 9 to 10, 2002, after leaving a party at St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota. His parents, Brian Guimond and Lisa Cheney, raised him in Maple Lake, Minnesota, after moving there from Redwood Falls when Joshua was 4 years old. Joshua had an impressive academic background, graduating from Maple Lake High School as valedictorian and class president. He was an honor student at St. John's University, a Catholic institution surrounded by 2,500 acres of woods and lakes, where he majored in political science and had aspirations of becoming a lawyer or politician. He was actively involved in the university's pre-law society and also played the baritone in the wind ensemble. However, in the months leading up to Joshua's disappearance, there had been reports of attacks, stalking, and even attempted abductions targeting male students in the St. John's area. On the evening of November 9, 2002, Joshua was working on a paper in his dorm room in St. Maur Hall before heading to a party at the Met 10 Court dormitory with a few friends. He left his dorm around 11:06 p.m. without his wallet, glasses, or other personal items, and seemed to be in good spirits, according to his friends. At the party, Joshua played poker with several other students and drank between 7 and 12 beers, but reportedly didn't appear intoxicated. Around 11:45 p.m., he left the apartment without saying anything, which some partygoers assumed meant he was either going back to his dorm or heading down the hall to use the bathroom. Many at the gathering didn't even realize he had left. The walk between Met 10 Court and St. Maur Hall was short, about 3 minutes, and witnesses reported seeing Joshua on the nearby bridge between 12:15 and 12:30 a.m., heading toward his dorm. However, it's unclear if he ever made it back to St. Maur. His friends tried calling him shortly after he left the party, but there was no answer. Some unusual activity occurred on Joshua's computer in his dorm room between 11:52 p.m. and 12:32 a.m., as music was played, and some songs were skipped, suggesting someone had been physically using the device during that time. When Joshua didn't show up for a mock trial debate with the Pre-Law Society, his friends began to worry. His roommate, who had also attended the party, confirmed that Joshua was not in their dorm when he returned. The group contacted his mother, Lisa, during the night, and by the afternoon of November 10th, after further failed attempts to reach Joshua, his friends alerted either campus security or the Stearns County Sheriff's Office. Joshua's car remained parked on campus, suggesting he hadn't left the area. In response to his disappearance, students on campus took extra precautions, such as avoiding walking alone and locking their doors. Joshua's friends started an awareness campaign, putting up posters across a wide area, from Fargo to the Twin Cities, in hopes of finding him. Law enforcement agencies, including the Stearns County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, the Minnesota National Guard, and the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, all worked together to investigate Joshua's disappearance. Early on, investigators considered the possibility that Joshua may have drowned in one of the nearby lakes. However, thorough searches, with divers, sonar equipment, and bloodhounds, found no trace of him. Other theories, such as suicide or voluntary disappearance, were also explored, though there was no solid evidence to support them. Joshua had left behind important personal belongings, such as his glasses, contact lenses, and credit cards, making it unlikely he had run away. Joshua's father, Brian Guimond, has long believed that his son may have been the victim of foul play. He speculated that Joshua was abducted for unknown reasons, though there was no sign of a struggle near campus.
The only one that has no reason to lie to anybody about anything. Everybody else has another agenda or something to protect. I want the answer.
A curious detail emerged in the investigation when files were found to have been deleted from Joshua's computer not long after he vanished. Whether this was done automatically or by someone else remains unknown, but police were able to recover some of the deleted information, which included material related to creating fake ID cards. Joshua Guimond's case has been unsolved for nearly 2 decades, with no substantial leads. Despite exhaustive searches, investigations, and public awareness efforts, no trace of him has been found. Joshua was last seen wearing a grey St. John sweatshirt and blue jeans, standing between 5 feet 10 inches and 6 feet tall. As time goes on, there remains hope that someone may know what happened to Joshua that night. Anyone with information regarding Joshua Guimond's disappearance is urged to contact the Stearns County Sheriff's Department. 18-year-old Crystal Kipper had plans to spend the evening of February 24, 1997, ice skating with a friend. She left her home in Kansas City and drove to St. Joseph, Missouri, to pick up her friend before heading to the ice rink. After an enjoyable evening, they began their drive back home. On their way, the low fuel light on Crystal's red 1989 Ford Probe XL began flashing. According to her friend, Crystal wasn't concerned. She assured her friend there was no need to stop at a gas station, believing her car always had good gas mileage. This wasn't unusual for Crystal. Her family recalled that she had run out of gas multiple times before, and even had to call AAA at least 3 times because of it. Around 2 a.m., Crystal dropped her friend off at their home in St. Joseph. She promised to call and let them know when she arrived home safely, but that call never came. Crystal disappeared, and she has not been seen since. Eyewitnesses later reported seeing a young woman, fitting Crystal's description, standing on the side of Interstate 29 between 2:20 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., near Kansas City International Airport. She appeared to be distressed and was flagging down traffic. A truck driver passing by noticed her, and then saw another car pull up behind her, presumably stopping to help. Meanwhile, Crystal's friend had fallen asleep waiting for the promised phone call. It wasn't until later that morning, when Crystal's mother woke up, that they realized something was terribly wrong. Worried, Crystal's mother retraced her route and eventually found Crystal's car, abandoned on the side of Interstate 29. The car's hazard lights were still on, and the battery was nearly dead, details that matched the eyewitness reports from earlier that morning. The Platte County Sheriff's Office was notified of Crystal's disappearance, and an investigation began. But apart from her abandoned car, and the few eyewitness accounts, there was little evidence to go on, leaving the case at a standstill. However, everything changed later that year, at the end of 1997, when a major break came in the investigation. The authorities were stunned when a suspect was finally named in connection with Crystal's case, John E. Williams. During a search of Williams' home for an unrelated crime, investigators discovered several of Crystal's personal belongings, including her ID card, paycheck stub, car keys, and some of her clothing. DNA testing confirmed that the clothes indeed belonged to Crystal. Williams soon confessed to accidentally hitting Crystal with his car on the night of February 24, 1997. His story was disturbingly backed up by the fact that he had his car's windshield repaired that same day, consistent with having struck someone. But despite his confession, Crystal's whereabouts remained a mystery. When questioned about what he had done with her, Williams claimed he panicked after the accident and disposed of her body in an undisclosed location. He led investigators on a futile search, offering no useful details. A few weeks later, Williams recanted his confession entirely, denying any involvement in Crystal's disappearance. Before authorities could bring him to trial for Crystal's case, as well as the unrelated crime he had been involved in, Williams tragically took his own life in prison. Despite his death, two of his former cellmates told investigators that Williams had repeatedly boasted about his involvement in Crystal's case. Sadly, investigators have never been able to locate Crystal's remains, and the case remains unsolved. Crystal Kipper, last seen on February 24, 1997, was a white female with brown hair and brown eyes. She had a small scar on her right cheek, stood 5 feet 5 inches, and weighed 125 pounds. On the night she disappeared, she was wearing a dark green olive mop turtleneck, Lucky You brand jeans, a denim car coat, a diamond cluster ring, and a gold band. If she was still alive today, Crystal would be 43 years old. Anyone with information regarding Crystal Kipper's disappearance is urged to contact the Platte County Sheriff's Department at 816-858-3452, quoting case number 97-003197. 19-year-old Heather Dawn Zimmerman was last seen on the evening of May 26, 1997, when she left her home in Gifford, Illinois. Around 8:30 p.m., Heather grabbed a can of soda from the refrigerator and walked out the front door. She never returned, and her disappearance remains a mystery to this day. Heather's parents initially believed she might have been heading to a party in a rural area near Rantoul, Illinois, but it remains unclear if that's where she intended to go, or how she would have traveled there. The details of her movements that night are vague. According to the Champaign County Sheriff's Office, Heather was supposedly dropped off near her home around 3 a.m. on the morning of May 27th, but her family insists that she never made it inside the house. Authorities later confirmed that there was no concrete evidence supporting the claim that she was dropped off at that time. By May 27th, when Heather still hadn't contacted her family, they became worried. All of her personal belongings were left at home, and she didn't have any cash or cards with her that night, as they had been stolen before her disappearance. These unusual circumstances led investigators to suspect foul play. The Champaign County Sheriff's Office has expressed concerns that Heather may have been the victim of foul play, especially since a similar case occurred a decade later. In 2007, Jamie Harper, another woman, mysteriously disappeared from the rural Rantoul area. The similarities between the two cases have raised alarm, and both authorities and locals believe the cases may be connected. While there is a person of interest linked to both Heather and Jamie's disappearances, this individual has never been publicly identified. Heather's husband, who was stationed in Japan at the time of her disappearance, is not considered a person of interest in the investigation. Heather Dawn Zimmerman was last seen leaving her family home in Gifford, Illinois, on May 26, 1997. At the time, she stood 5 feet 6 inches tall, weighed around 115 pounds, and had distinctive features. Heather is described as a white female, with blonde hair and green eyes. She has a tattoo of 3 roses on her ankle, a mole on her neck, and multiple piercings, 8 holes in her left ear and 6 in her right. The Charlie Project also notes that Heather has scars on her left arm, wrist, and index finger, and her left ring finger doesn't function properly. Heather's family is desperate for any information that could bring them closure. Anyone with information regarding her case is urged to contact the Champaign County Sheriff's Office at 217-384-1213. Similarly, Jamie Harper's case remains unsolved. Anyone with information about her disappearance is encouraged to contact the Paxton Police Department at 217-379-4315 or the Rantoul Police Department at 217-892-2103. Both families continue to seek answers as they hope for resolution in these troubling cases. Curtis Pishon had an impressive start to his adult life. After high school, he worked as a police dispatcher and then joined the Army, serving with the military police in Korea. He earned a bachelor's degree and joined the Concord, New Hampshire Police Department in 1983. In 1994, Curtis's career was cut short when he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which made it impossible for him to use his service weapon. This diagnosis was devastating, leading Curtis to become depressed and start drinking heavily. Curtis then began working as a security guard, using his skills from his police career. After losing one job for showing up drunk, he was hired in 1998 to work the night shift at Venture Corporation, a factory in Seabrook, New Hampshire. He held this job successfully until the summer of 2000. On July 4, 2000, Curtis arrived at work at 9:30 p.m. and began his shift normally. He checked in with his supervisor at midnight, and everything seemed fine. However, at 1:42 a.m. on July 5th, Curtis called the fire department to report that his car was on fire. The fire was put out, but the car was destroyed, along with all his valuables inside. Despite this, Curtis seemed to handle the situation well. Around 3:25 a.m., Curtis spoke with his security supervisor and appeared fine. But by 3:45 a.m., when another employee arrived, Curtis was missing and has not been seen since. Some people thought Curtis might have committed suicide due to his health problems, the loss of his car, and his career changes. However, his family disagreed. New information has also suggested that this might not be the case. Since 2005, police have had a person of interest in Curtis's disappearance. They think the car fire might have been a distraction. While there was no clear evidence of arson, it also didn't seem accidental. On the night Curtis disappeared, a vending machine and a change machine in the factory were broken into using a company forklift. It's possible that Curtis saw this crime happening and was killed to keep him silent. Curtis had previously told his family that he felt unsafe at work because of illegal activities in the factory's parking lot. Despite these clues, the police haven't found enough evidence to charge anyone. Curtis Pishon's case is still open. Ashley Heavyrunner Loring, a member of the Blackfeet Nation, lived on the Blackfeet Reservation near Browning, Montana. At 20 years old, she had faced some challenges in life but was on a promising path forward. Ashley and her older sister, Kimberly, spent several months in foster care during their childhood while their mother struggled with substance abuse. Eventually, the sisters were allowed to live with their grandparents on their horse ranch. There, they learned to ride horses and enjoyed summers swimming in a nearby creek. In 2017, Ashley was studying at Blackfeet Community College with plans to transfer to the University of Montana. She intended to move in with Kimberly, who had relocated to Missoula, Montana, after securing a well-paying job working with senior citizens. Ashley needed to wait until early June to move, as Kimberly was away on vacation. However, upon her return, Kimberly was unable to contact Ashley. She couldn't find her at home, and Ashley had vanished. The exact date and details of Ashley's disappearance are unclear. The last time her family saw her was in early June 2017. When the Bureau of Indian Affairs was contacted, they suggested that Ashley, being an adult, had probably left on her own. Her family disagreed, believing Ashley wouldn't cut off contact, especially since she had been looking forward to moving in with Kimberly. It didn't make sense for her to suddenly leave the reservation without informing anyone. the Loring family did not receive consistent help from law enforcement in their search for Ashley. Kimberly took charge of the effort, quitting her job and moving back to the reservation to be closer to her grandmother and focus on finding her sister. The reservation is now covered with missing persons posters made by the Loring family. Kimberly tirelessly searches social media and follows up on every lead or rumor about her sister's whereabouts. The most demanding and dangerous part of Kimberly's search is the physical effort she puts in. She organizes and leads exhaustive searches almost daily, covering rugged and remote areas with the help of family members, carrying firearms for protection. And the older sister. "I need to do this," Kimberly told the Associated Press. "I don't want to search until I'm 80, but if I have to, I will." In March 2018, the FBI took over the investigation from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Despite their involvement, Ashley's disappearance remains unsolved. There is a short video of Kimberly. She is talking about Ashley.
Every time I think about my sister, I just think about her smile. Everybody wanted to talk to her. She was so beautiful and outgoing. Ashley knew no stranger.
In October 2020, Jorden Cheyenne Nebling, a 19-year-old woman living in Travelers Rest, South Carolina, vanished under mysterious circumstances. Jorden had recently secured a new job and was determined to leave behind a troubled past. Her childhood was marked by instability. She and her sister were placed in foster care at a young age before being adopted by a woman named Mary Tucker. During her teenage years, Jorden struggled with substance abuse, but by the time she got her new job, she was reportedly clean and hopeful about her future. Tragically, she disappeared before she could fully embrace this new chapter in her life, and her case remains unsolved. The events leading up to Jorden's disappearance began when she and a male friend decided to travel to Simpsonville, South Carolina, to visit some other friends. Lacking transportation, they borrowed a car from a mutual friend. However, once they arrived, Jorden's friend decided to leave with someone else, and on October 20th, Jorden set out to drive home alone. She made it as far as Old White Horse Road in Travelers Rest when the car began to sputter and eventually broke down. The residents of a nearby house later told investigators they saw Jorden get into another car, driven by a man they didn't recognize. That was the last time anyone saw or heard from her. When Jorden still hadn't returned home by November 8th, her adoptive mother, Mary Tucker, reported her missing to the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, prompting an investigation. It soon emerged that the man who had picked Jorden up was her boyfriend, Tyler Wilkins, whom she had been dating for 2 years. When questioned, Tyler claimed that after picking Jorden up, they went to his place, where they had an argument. According to Tyler, Jorden then left on foot, saying she was going out, but didn't mention where she was headed. No further clues or tips have surfaced in Jorden's case, and her whereabouts remain unknown. Many people suspect Tyler Wilkins may be involved in Jorden's disappearance, especially given his later criminal behavior. In 2022, Wilkins was arrested and charged with the murder of his new girlfriend, Clarissa Michelle Winchester. It was discovered that Wilkins had held Clarissa captive in a family member's home, and she died as a result of the assault. While Wilkins awaits trial for these charges, no additional charges have been brought against him in connection with Jorden's disappearance. However, investigators believe that something tragic happened to Jorden and do not think she simply disappeared on her own. The search for answers continues, and authorities welcome any new information. Jorden is described as having blonde hair and blue or hazel eyes. She is about 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighs between 90 and 100 pounds. At the time of her disappearance, she was wearing black leggings and a gray sweatshirt. She also has a tattoo on one of her forearms that reads "Live Free" along with a few birds. Anyone with information about Jordan's whereabouts or what happened on the day she disappeared is urged to contact the Greenville County Sheriff's Office at 864-271-5210. The disappearance of Andrea Wharton is a case entangled with one of Australia's most infamous criminal investigations, yet it often goes overlooked due to its connection to other, more widely known cases. Andrea was just 23 years old when she vanished in 1984. She was the youngest of 3 children and lived in Gold Coast, Queensland. The last 7 years of her life had been difficult, and she had become involved with people who were dangerous to be around. Among them was her boyfriend, Yolik, whom she had met 3 years earlier. Despite Yolik being extradited to New South Wales in September to serve time for drug-related crimes, their relationship continued. The last time Andrea's family saw her was on February 19, 1984, following an argument with her parents. The details of the argument remain unknown, but Andrea left, telling them she was going to visit friends in Byron Bay, New South Wales. A few days later, she called her parents, still upset, and on February 29, they received a letter supposedly from Andrea, postmarked in Darlinghurst, a suburb of Sydney, 8 hours south of Byron Bay. In the letter, Andrea apologized for the distress she had caused, but said she wasn't ready to return home. She mentioned that she was going away for a short time. Now, nearly 40 years later, Andrea has never come back. Given Andrea's lifestyle at the time, her absence may not have immediately raised alarms, as it seemed possible she had left voluntarily. However, as time passed and her family couldn't reach her, it became clear something was wrong. Andrea was reported missing, but there were few clues for the police to follow. It was later discovered that Andrea had flown directly to Sydney, where her boyfriend Yolik was living, suggesting she had never intended to go to Byron Bay. Darlinghurst, from where the letter was sent, was known to be a dangerous area at the time. Some reports indicated that Andrea may have been in contact with criminals in the area, but concrete information was hard to come by. 19 months after Andrea's disappearance, Yolik also vanished. Police believed the 2 cases were connected, but they did not suspect Yolik of being responsible for Andrea's disappearance. Yolik was last seen on September 2, 1985, leaving his parents' home to meet a man named John Anderson. Anderson had a long criminal record, including drug offenses and violent crimes. He was also a suspect in several cases involving women and may have been linked to the disappearance of Trudy Adams. If Andrea were alive today, she would be 63 years old. She is described as being 5 feet 3 inches tall, with a slim build, fair hair, and hazel eyes. She has a scar from an appendix operation and another scar over her right eyebrow. Anyone with information about Andrea Wharton's case is urged to contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-333-000. In the late 1980s, many young people in Morgantown, West Virginia, saw Marsher Ferbar as more than just a local business owner. To them, she was a nurturing, motherly figure. Marsher provided a welcoming space where music, ideas, and creativity could flourish. However, in April of 1988, she mysteriously vanished, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and a community in shock. Marsher Ferbar led an alternative lifestyle, deeply rooted in communal living and progressive values. Before settling in West Virginia, she had established communal living spaces in New Jersey. In Morgantown, she was affectionately known as the Jewish Earth Mother. In 1982, she opened the Underground Railroad, a bar and music venue located at 123 Pleasant Street. Although Marsher wasn't particularly fond of alcohol, she had a deep love for music. The Underground Railroad became a hub for various bands, including the then up-and-coming Red Hot Chili Peppers. Next door, Marsher ran the Dry House, a similar space open to all ages, where young people could gather and find a sense of belonging. Marsher's influence extended far beyond her business ventures. She was known for helping those whom society often overlooked: college dropouts, ex-convicts, and single mothers. Whenever a new band performed at her bar, Marsher made it a point to be there, always ready to welcome them personally. Her absence on April 27, 1988, raised immediate concerns. It had been several days since anyone had seen her, and the last confirmed sighting was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on April 23. Gary Perkins, a friend with a criminal record, claimed to be the last person to see Marsher before she disappeared. Although the police found no concrete evidence that she had returned from Florida, Perkins insisted that Marsher had indeed come back to Morgantown. He stated that he had lunch with her and then dropped her off at the Underground Railroad. Some staff members also claimed to have seen Marsher that day before she went out to run errands. However, as days turned into weeks, there was still no sign of Marsher. Marsher had been separated from her husband for some time, and her 2 sons were adults by the time of her disappearance. She had a tenant living in the same building and a wide circle of friends and acquaintances. Despite this, no one could say for certain that she hadn't simply decided to leave without telling anyone. Due to Marsher's free-spirited lifestyle, her friends were initially hesitant to involve the police. However, by May 1st, they realized something was seriously wrong and reported her missing. Even after the report was filed, it took some time for the police to begin their investigation. Marsher had connections in several states, including New York, New Jersey, and Florida, leading to speculation that she might have taken a spontaneous trip. However, the police found no activity on her credit cards after she left Florida, raising the possibility that she had never returned to West Virginia at all. Over the years, the police have followed various leads, including the theory that Marsher's disappearance may have been linked to organized crime and illegal substances. While few details have been made public, the authorities have kept certain information private, intending to use it to verify any leads or confessions that may arise in the future. Another theory suggests that Marsher might have entered witness protection for reasons unknown. However, Marsher's friends find it hard to believe that she would have left willingly, even if she were in danger. It seems more likely that Marsher is no longer alive. If Marsher Ferbar were alive today, she would be 87 years old. She stood between 5 feet 4 inches and 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighed between 140 and 165 pounds. Anyone with information regarding her disappearance is urged to contact the Morgantown Police Department at 304-284-7454. Her community continues to seek closure, hoping that one day, the mystery of Marsher Ferbar's disappearance will finally be solved. Melvyn Gamblin, a passionate sports enthusiast, traveled the world to attend major events like the Olympics and the Rugby World Cup. However, after one of these trips, Melvyn mysteriously vanished and hasn't been seen or heard from since. At the time of his disappearance, Melvyn was 37 years old and had traveled alone from his home in northern England to Athens to watch the 2004 Olympics. The Games were a major passion of his. He had attended the last 4 Olympics, which had taken him to far-off places like Australia and North America. Compared to those trips, a visit to Greece seemed relatively straightforward for someone as experienced as Melvyn. Melvyn had tickets to several events, including swimming, athletics, and rowing, but he tried to pack as many different sports into his trip as possible. He spent most of August in Greece, and his trip occasionally overlapped with those of friends from his hometown of Darlington. One friend recalled how Melvyn sometimes slept less than an hour each night, eager to catch both early morning and late night events. Throughout his time in Athens, Melvyn regularly sent emails and text messages to his family in England, sharing his experiences. Everything seemed to be going well, and his family had no reason to worry. The last time they heard from him was on August 28th, the day before the Olympics closing ceremony. He was in high spirits, having just watched the 4x100-meter relay in which Great Britain won the gold. Melvyn had planned to stay in Greece for a few extra days after the Games, with his return flight booked for September 3rd. It wasn't until he missed this flight that his family realized something was wrong. When they couldn't reach him, the search for Melvyn began. Police investigations revealed that the last confirmed sighting of Melvyn was at the hotel where he had been staying. On September 3rd, the day he was supposed to check out and fly home, he was seen leaving the hotel without properly checking out, leaving most of his luggage behind. Since then, there have been a few unconfirmed sightings of Melvyn on various Greek islands, but none of these leads have led to his whereabouts. Melvyn's family believed that his medical condition may have played a role in his disappearance. He suffered from ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome. While this condition didn't usually disrupt his life significantly, he could experience severe episodes. When at home, Melvyn would often sleep at least 10 hours a day. His family feared that the lack of sleep during his time in Athens might have exacerbated his condition, possibly leading to depression. Although Melvyn had experienced episodes before, he had always stayed in touch with his family. The fact that he hadn't reached out to them was deeply concerning, and they didn't believe this was a typical relapse. A strange and puzzling clue emerged a few weeks after Melvyn disappeared. A photograph of him taken in Athens was mailed to his home in England. There was no note or explanation included with the photo, and it was clear that Melvyn hadn't taken it himself. It's possible that someone else had the photo developed and sent it to Melvyn's home, perhaps unaware that he was missing. Unfortunately, like the potential sightings, this photograph didn't bring the police any closer to finding Melvyn. Years after Melvyn's unexplained disappearance, his family continues to hold on to hope that he might still be alive somewhere in Greece. They are still searching for answers to this strange and unsettling case. At the time he went missing, Melvyn was described as being 5 feet 10 inches tall, of medium build, with short brown hair. He also wore glasses. Anyone with information about Melvyn Gamblin's case is urged to contact Durham Constabulary at 101 or the Missing People Charity at 116,000. On July 16, 1996, Susan Walsh dropped off her son with her estranged husband, planning to be gone for just 30 minutes. However, she never returned, and her disappearance soon became one of the most puzzling mysteries. Despite widespread media attention, the case of Susan Walsh remains unsolved to this day. Susan had always dreamed of being a writer. To pursue her passion, she studied English and writing at William Paterson University. To support herself through college, Susan began working as an exotic dancer. While she initially enjoyed the work, she later expressed how much she grew to dislike it, especially dealing with the customers. After graduating in 1984, she moved into freelance journalism. Around this time, she also married Mark Walsh, and in 1988, the couple welcomed a son. Sadly, their marriage deteriorated, and by 1996, they were living apart. As a journalist, Susan's most notable work was for The Village Voice, a popular alternative newspaper. Her first significant story focused on the Russian mafia's influence over the strip clubs where she had once worked. This piece stirred up controversy, leading club owners to align with their dancers against the mafia, placing Susan in a potentially dangerous situation. However, Susan seemed undeterred by the threats and continued her investigative reporting. Her next major project involved a strange and growing underground culture, a vampire movement in New York City nightclubs. While many participants were merely dressed in gothic fashion, some claimed to actually consume the life force of others or even drink blood like vampires. A few even admitted to taking lives to feed their cravings. Susan became intrigued by the subculture, and she even dated several individuals who identified as vampires. Though Susan was passionate about the topic, the Village Voice ultimately decided not to publish her story on the vampire movement, as the editor felt it was too biased. During this time, Susan began confiding in friends about a stalker she believed was following her. One ex-boyfriend recalled Susan telling him that her stalker was another ex-boyfriend who had previously worked for the mob. Initially, some friends thought she might be overreacting, but soon they too noticed suspicious behavior that supported her fears. Despite the danger, Susan continued to push forward with her work. Financially, Susan was struggling as a writer, so she reluctantly returned to exotic dancing to make ends meet. Although it was no longer a job she enjoyed, it provided her with the income she needed. It also allowed her to assist friends with research for books and documentaries related to the industry. At this point, Susan's life was incredibly hectic. She was fearful for her safety, likely because of her investigative work involving the mafia, and she was also battling personal demons. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and was dealing with severe mood swings and depression in the months leading up to her disappearance. When Susan vanished, her case gained immediate attention due to her past journalism work. She left behind all her personal belongings at her apartment, including her wallet and pager. One strange detail that investigators noted was that the entire month of July had been torn out of Susan's calendar, a clue that only deepened the mystery. Police first questioned her estranged husband, but he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. In fact, authorities never officially named a person of interest in Susan's disappearance. Some believe she may have chosen to disappear intentionally, but her family strongly disagrees. They can't imagine Susan abandoning her son voluntarily. Over the years, police have reopened the case multiple times, but no new evidence has ever surfaced. At the time of her disappearance, Susan was 36 years old. She stood 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed approximately 110 pounds. Despite decades of investigation, Susan Walsh remains missing, and her case continues to baffle both law enforcement and the public. Anyone with information about Susan Walsh's disappearance is urged to contact the Nutley Police Department at 973-284-4940.